my call. I really appreciate getting to talk to you. And, Paul, I really respect you guys.
Yeah. What's your question? Go ahead.
Well, I don't actually have a question. My son was in the Army. He was in a sniper recon platoon over in Afghanistan, came back, and then he has to do a stint in the National Guard for a year and a half or 2 years. And they just got done with their big training down in Idaho, and there was a 2-star general and 2 guys there from the Pentagon. And each of them was given a survey, and the survey said, are you willing to confiscate weapons from civilians? And if ordered to, will you fire on American citizens? And, you know, he said they were outraged. And the general told him that the Pentagon guys said they were gearing up for something in 2016, but they wouldn't tell him what, and told him a couple of other things on the side. And so I thought you guys would be interested in that. That's
very interesting. Is that online anywhere, or is that this is just a story from your son?
Well, no, that's just the story from my son and the guys that, you know, they had to go over there. So the guys from his platoon that came back with him, and they were outraged. He's trying to get a copy from somebody, you know, so we can send it to you guys.
Yeah, a copy or even a shot on a cell phone, anything like that. Anytime something like that pops up, you need to immediately shoot that on your smartphone and send it to tips@infowars.com or whistleblower@infowars.com. And I comb through those regularly, and I love to receive the tips. I mean, I've received some outrageous stuff, some stuff that we haven't even gone public with yet because we have to vet it first because it's so outrageous. But, Roy, thanks for the call. We're going to be back right after this with more of your questions. Rashid, Philadelphia, what is your question, sir?
I don't really have a question. I just wanted to mention something that I don't know, seemed interesting last month.
Speak right into your phone, please.
The first week of August, I watched 12 Monkeys for the first time, and that seemed kind of interesting that the whole Ebola thing was being hyped at that same time. So, I don't know.
You don't think it was your watching of 12 Monkeys that caused it, do you?
I don't know.
No, I doubt it. That
was a weird coincidence.
Well, you know, 12 Monkeys does have a lot of interesting stuff. And what's interesting as well is I watched that movie just recently this year, and we started making a promo on it, and we kind of got put on the back burner, and I'm going to pull it back out this week and finish it up because, yeah, there was a disease out there, and people thought it was having to do with these the army of the 12 monkeys, and it ended up just being a crazy person who actually worked in a lab, a bio lab, went around infecting the world. And so they had to send a guy, Bruce Willis, back in the past to help find out how it spread. That was their big thing. Paul, do you have any comment on the movie 12 Monkeys and how it relates to Ebola?
That's one that I've never seen, actually, Rob. I always intended to see that one, but never got around to it. But on the previous call, this army drill with the CDC targeting, quote, zombies, that was based around an epidemic. I mean, the quote from the article was, trainees will have to respond to medical emergencies while being harassed by zombies. So this zombie thing, they used it as a cover to get people interested, but it was actually all based around a pandemic scenario where they would have to deal with huge numbers of people. So very concerning indeed. And then again, on the caller after that, in fact, Jim Garrow, who we had on as a guest quite recently, he exposed another one of these surveys where the army are asked if they will be willing to fire on Americans, and those surveys have been taking place for at least 2 decades. We've reported on them numerous times, and he actually had a gun, an illegal gun planted at his home in Canada, went to prison for a while for it. So he claims he was targeted for releasing that information, that an army, a service member in the army told him that they had been given a survey questioning whether they would fire on Americans. So this is something that keeps on cropping up again and again, has done for at least 2 decades or more.
And so, Paul, maybe it does make sense that the DOD is getting involved in Ebola. Maybe they are going to be part of this eradication program where they cordon off areas, and when people try to get out, they're just going to mow them down with machine gun fire. So maybe that does make sense, even though people are saying it doesn't make sense over on Fox News. That's Lucas Tomlinson who wrote that. And but yeah, General Martin Dempsey said the Department of Defense #1 priority is combating Ebola. Right there, combating Ebola. So maybe it does make sense that they're having these. And by 2016, you know, we just had a caller. His son was getting training in Idaho, and there was Pentagon reps there and a 2-star general, and it was asking people, you know, would you confiscate guns from Americans? Would you fire on Americans? And some of these guys will do this. I don't think a lot of them will. I think they're going to be very surprised at the response they get from our military. But you know, I mean, you can see what happens in any of these situations. Ferguson, you know, the cops start firing on people, firing tear gas on people. Nobody steps up and says, wait a minute, should we be doing this? These people are unarmed. You know, maybe we should just go after the people who are looting, the people who are causing the trouble, identify those people and go in and get them. If you're a protester, you're not going to go attack the police, well, until they start attacking you. Or if you're infected with some sort of weird pandemic. You know, what are your thoughts on that, Paul?
The fact that they're merely asking the question, will you fire on Americans, is concerning enough. Then, of course, you've got the report which recently came out where the Army is saying they're not prepared to fight the future combat arena, which will be the main arena of combat, quote, mega cities, including New York City was one of them mentioned in the report. So they're gearing up the Army to be stationed in occupying and combating insurgents, anti-government extremists and others, and under medical emergencies was one of the other scenarios in mega cities within the next 20 years. So then you can tie that back to the concerns about Ebola victims going to highly populated cities like Mexico City, for example, or indeed Paris, because there are many African immigrants in France that go back and forth between these West African countries. So, I mean, that is the concern, that an Ebola sufferer would land in a major city and it would spread more rapidly because these Western African countries are quite sparsely populated. Of course, Africa is a huge continent in comparison to these mega cities where it could spread very much more quickly and to a more devastating effect. Totally agree. Well, our next caller is O'Brien. O'Brien, what is your question?
Yes. Basically, if the State Department is going to be buying all this hazmat gear for their diplomats, wouldn't they need to be? Wouldn't the CDC need to do that as well?
Well, I bet the CDC probably has a lot of this stuff. Who knows whether it needs to be upgraded after time, but that is interesting. Paul, what do you think? Why does the State Department need this stuff?
I don't know whether they would then hand it on to the public health authorities. That's what I'm assuming would happen. But I mean, I was astonished by the sheer number of it, 160,000. I'm sure they've already got a lot of them in supply and stock already. So, but you know, they did the same thing with the potassium iodide pills after Fukushima. So they make sure that they're prepared while the vast majority of Americans are not. I mean, they rolled back some of those previous measures in the context of nuclear power plants where people who lived nearby were given adequate supplies of potassium iodide pills. So, you know, they're concerned about themselves, not so concerned about the American people, it seems, when they make these large-scale purchases. Whether they're actually going to foresee a pandemic event is unknown, but they're definitely going to be prepared for it.
If there is a Titanic-like event, I think the government will be the first ones into the lifeboats, and then it'll be women and children and the rich. And if you're not one of those people, you're going to have to fend for yourself. You're going to prepare, you know, which is why one reason it's good to know what colloidal silver does for your body. I'm just going to do this for a quick plug. Silver Bullet is one of the InfoWars Life family of, I guess, health remedies that you could use for yourself. You know, I use colloidal silver a lot personally. And one thing, I also make a lot of it. And one thing I do with the Silver Bullet is I take it and I mix it in with my batches that aren't as strong. This is a 30 parts per million strength, which is very strong. And that's harder to make in your home laboratory. But I make about 10 parts per million, and then I add that in. Anytime I get a sniffle or anything, I shoot it up my nose, breathe it in, and that's what I do. You're welcome to do what you want with it, but Silver Bullet available at InfoWarsLife.com. You can use that information as you will. We're going to be back with more calls, and then we're going to finish up the show, the little NFL worship news for all you people out there watching the ball games today. And I think we'll finish up also with a quick chemtrail video that came across our way. We posted it on Friday. We're going to tell you what it all means. It's Infowars.com. It's the Alex Jones Show. I'm your host, Rob Dew. Stay tuned.
Everything we said came true. Everything we've done's been right.
us live on prisonplanet.tv. We have a video that we posted on September 12th, video undeniable footage of jet aircraft spraying, and you see a jet with, it's got 4 contrails coming out, and then in the center of those are these on and off plumes that keep going out. I mean, it is undeniable when you look at that they're definitely spraying us with something. And I was reminded of that from a Drudge Report post. What was that strange streak of light in the Bay Area sky Friday morning? This was posted, somebody shot this, I believe, out in California. So check that footage out, pass that around. That is very interesting footage on chemtrail spraying. We're going to go to Paul in New Jersey. Paul, what is your question for either myself or Paul Joseph Watson in England?
About the Ukrainian thing, that's all set up. They want to get rid of Putin. Putin's got his gas lines, and they want his gas lines.
Oh, sure, it's always about
Putin
resources.
don't want to go. He wants to get the Russian people out of Ukraine. He didn't invade Ukraine. That's all the EU. They want Ukraine to join the EU, and Putin wants them to be a sovereign state. That's the whole thing there. As far as the other stuff, welcome to the New World Order. I call it the New World Order. It stinks. It
definitely stinks. I totally agree with you on that. Paul, you got anything else to add?
Yeah, I mean, the major thing with Russia recently was, again, this huge gas pipeline deal they signed with China, the biggest ever. Another example of how they're building this multipolar world system in opposition to the unipolar world system of NATO, the US, and Europe. So that's what it's all about. And definitely Ukraine now, they've got a truce at the moment, but these sanctions keep on getting more aggressive, even though Putin agreed to the truce. So they only keep turning the volume up more and more.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time before it breaks out over in that region once again. Peter, Washington, what is your question? Or it looks like you have a Smedley Butler, Paul Joseph Watson correction. So,
can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Paul, I think you're a good reporter, but even Homer has been known to nod. I think Smedley Butler was either a communist or a man who hated rich people. The head of that committee was Dick Steen, who was a communist agent. He was paid $1,000 a month by the GPU, which was a former name of the KGB. New York Times laughed at him. New York Times was owned and operated by Jews. Anything that reminded them of Hitler, they would go and investigate. And even...
I think Smedley Butler predates Hitler by at least 20 years.
Even if there wasn't much to it, they'd play it up because they liked FDR. Fascism? FDR was fine with that. The NRA was his first program. It was turned down by the Supreme Court, and everybody knew the NRA was inspired by that. Mussolini wasn't popular for another year. Hitler? A man with a Charlie Chaplin mustache. Now, some foreigners were popular, Ronald Colman, Valentino, Garbo, but not Charlie Chaplin as a leader. I think that if this guy had... Hello?
Yeah. So what is your correction about Smedley Butler? You think he was a communist?
He was either a communist or a man who hated rich people.
Paul, what do you think about that?
The caller's referring to the business plot, which was a conspiracy, a proven conspiracy in 1934 by this group of Bush's grandfather was one of them, conspirators to overthrow President Roosevelt, and they tried to get Smedley Butler to lead an army coup which would overthrow the president, but he ended up blowing the whistle on it by talking to the House of Representatives committee. So it was one of those conspiracy theories which at the time the New York Times dismissed as non-existent, which turned out to be true. It was confirmed by the investigative committee that this conspiracy did indeed take place to try and overthrow Roosevelt. Whether it was some communist aspect to it, I don't know, but I know that it was a confirmed plot at the time, and that was in 1934.
All right. Hey, Peter, thanks for the call. Habu in Wisconsin. You want to talk about Obama's speech in Syrian sovereignty? Go ahead.
Yeah, hello. Thank you for the opportunity. Let me just say this about Paul Watson. I think his take on foreign policy matters is spot on, and unlike the American interpretation, but we'll just leave it at that. What I'm calling about in particular is, President Obama's notions about being able to strike Syria no matter what, meaning not working with them, just going ahead and striking at will, and perhaps a backdoor into getting a regime change taken care of. The Syrians, and I'm sure the Russians have something to say about that, and what they're going to do is, and this is one scenario, the Russians can thwart those plans by announcing that they've been called in by the Syrian government, which is not too far from the mark, and then set up a false flag, have the FSA, the Free Syrian Army, attack them, so to speak, and then they are going to be attacking these ISIS and ISIL cretins, and then we'll see how the U.S. can just go and bomb Syria, having those Su-300 SAM batteries. That should be a tall order for American aircraft.
Yeah, and all it's going to take is somebody with some of these missiles that they got from Benghazi to shoot down an American plane. They just say, hey, it was the Syrian army. We're going to go after them. We got to take out Assad now so we can take out ISIS. That's going to be the war cry. Paul, what do you have to say about that?
Well, the Syrian air defense is a hell of a lot stronger than Libya's. I mean, obviously we had airstrikes on Libya with basically zero actual response. But in terms of Syria, they've said that if the United States flies warplanes over their territory, they will consider it an act of war. So this is what they're trying to provoke. They're trying to provoke a response to justify an expanded bombing targeting Assad.
That's right, President Devil Horns. We have to pay the bills that we owe, and we sure are racking up lots of bills here in the United States, and we've taken a record number of tax receipts in this year so far. So the plan's working perfectly. You're bleeding the American public dry, and you're going to start wars in other countries and send our men off to fight imaginary enemies that we actually fund and build up. That's kind of how it works. That's kind of it in a nutshell. We got a couple more callers we're going to go to, and I'm going to bring up some NFL news here on NFL Worship Day that we have in the United States, and I guess it's moving over into Britain. But let's go with Mark in Cali. Wants to talk about in-game in the Pianka comments, which is something we didn't cover with all this Ebola news, and thanks for bringing that up, Mark. Go ahead. Are you there, Mark?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
Watching in-game once again on YouTube, and about 2 hours into it, it gets into Professor Pianka's foolish statement, wicked statement. That,
yeah, he's a nice guy, isn't he?
Yeah, and what's amazing is that anybody agreed with him, and yet there was many that did. They gave him a standing ovation instead of said, booed him down.
Kill more people.
And,
kill more people.
Right. Now, look, one good idea where we can spread this is a policeman in San Francisco told me to put Alex Jones on my T-shirt so I could go into the Board of Supervisors meeting because they have some rule you can't carry a sign. But to circumvent that, you can put on the InfoWars thing, or mine just asked people to Google Alex Jones and John DeCamp on the Franklin cover-up. But
sure.
Put it on front and back. People do read the T-shirt.
Google
and
Building
that's a
7.
good way to do it.
Google fluoride in the water supply. There's all kind of things you can put on a T-shirt, and anybody can do it, and that is a great way to wake people up. We also have some great T-shirts at InfoWarsStore.com that you can get. We have a new Molon Labe. You get people to ask you, what the heck does that mean? Spartan helmet with 50 cal bullets on it, and that's a new one. And we've got all kind of shirts that can wake people up. One that I like to wear is there's poison in your water supply. That'll get people asking questions. Why is there a drop with a skull in it? That will definitely wake some people up. So if you're out there right now on your computer, go to InfoWarsStore.com and check out our selection of shirts that are guaranteed to wake people up. Another good one, an old favorite, is the Hitler-Stalin Mouse shirt. Mass murderers agree gun control works. I mean, you can't get any plainer than that, people. Gun control works, especially if you're a dictator and want to get rid of your population. Paul, anything else you want to add to that?
No, I also love to see the graffiti. Of course, we get, emails on a weekly or monthly basis where Infowars.com is plastered all over the place, of course, in legal and lawful areas, don't forget.
Of course, that's the only places we'd recommend.
Keep them coming.
Yeah, and we have a guy in New Orleans who rides around on a bike with a sign that even has the Alex Jones Show playing on it. So, kudos to all the people out there that are getting the word out. But it's not just, here at InfoWars, you can also be a leader in your area. You know, start organizing people, start getting together, putting out your own media, put out your own videos. It's not that hard. Go confront your own politicians and put it up on your own YouTube channel. You know, this is the way we're going to win. We cannot be everywhere at once. That's why we need your help, and we totally appreciate your help. There's the 50 Cal Molon Labe T-shirt. That's going to be one of our best sellers. I could tell. Joe Biggs put one on right before he went out to New York, and man, it fit him to a T. Really good-looking shirt, and I think Alex Jones designed that. He had a hand in. He throws the concept out there, gives it to the graphic designers, and